Hello to all of you wonderful moms out there. This is episode 50, and I have some big news to share. You might have already figured it out from the updated podcast cover, but today is the first episode of my newly renamed show. And so I'd like to welcome you to the Achieve Your Ambitious Mom Life podcast. While the name change sounds so big, don't worry. You're still going to get the same quality content that you've been used to getting twice a week. In today's milestone 50th episode, I'm getting vulnerable and sharing my personal journey of how I went from feeling stuck in my most challenging stage of motherhood to rediscovering my authentic self through intentional self-discovery. As I've been going through this name change, I realized that I never actually shared why I called it Solve for Mom in the first place, or my full story of why I created this show in the first place. Well, have you ever felt like a shell of your former self? You're stuck in a relentless cycle of daily tasks. Do you remember that woman who had passions and dreams and a spark in her eyes before motherhood took over? Well, I have been there, and this podcast is really the result of the journey that I took. And in today's episode, I'm sharing that story with you. But this is not just a personal inside view of my journey. Because if you're struggling with finding yourself again in motherhood or yearning to step into your calling while balancing family responsibilities, this episode is really for you too. As a PhD researcher who's built a successful career only to find myself completely lost in terms of my identity after becoming a mom, well, I know exactly what it feels like when you're overwhelmed and disconnected from yourself and desperately searching for purpose beyond the daily mom grind. So in today's episode, you're going to learn how I transformed from constantly putting everyone else first to creating a life plan that helped me reconnect with what makes me feel like me again. No more waiting for later to pursue your dreams or make time for personal growth. So if you're ready to break free from putting your dreams on hold and start your own journey back to purposeful living while still being that amazing mom that I know you are, well, grab your earbuds and listen closely to this episode of Achieve Your Ambitious Mom Life. Are you looking for a way to blend success and motherhood without losing sight of who you are? I get it. I've been there too. Hi, I'm Anoki, a PhD researcher, business owner, and homeschooling mom of 2 boys. As your life coach, I help moms like you create a life you love at home and at work. If you're ready to stop feeling overwhelmed, overscheduled, and overlooked, and want a clear roadmap to a balanced life, a meaningful career, and finally feeling like yourself again while being the awesome mama that you are, you're in the right place. In this journey to create the life you truly desire, it's time to rediscover your dreams and achieve your ambitious mom life. I have a quick favor to ask, and it will take less than a minute, I promise. Pause and write a review for my show along with your 5-star rating. This helps my show reach other women like you. Like Melanie, who says, Anoki understands your need for a creative outlet as a mom. She helps you find simple ways to carve out larger blocks of time and actually get started on projects that you are passionate about. Let this podcast help fuel your creative genius. Thank you, Melanie, and I am so glad you're making it happen for you. See, we all have passions that are part of who we are, and those don't just go away because we become moms, right? So if you're tired of tapping into one side of you all the time, please keep listening to this podcast so you can reconnect with the things that make you spark and to nurture you so that you can go on nurturing those precious kiddos of yours. I hope the show is a friendly weekly invitation for you to start thinking about what you can do for yourself with that bigger picture in mind, but also gives you tangible strategies of what to do. And your generous reviews help me create more great content like what you are about to hear now. It occurred to me that I've never actually properly set up an episode where I told you about my story, about why I show up week after week on this podcast that I created. Because if you look at my background, it's actually not really obvious based on all of my training and expertise why I am now choosing to spend my time building a business that involves helping other high-achieving moms like you to customize your lives. Of course, there is a reason though, and I want to show you that you can reconnect with all of those things that make you feel like you, no matter what stage in motherhood you are. And to figure out how to get back to being who you want to be instead of just who you need to be. Before I became a mom, I had already built what many would consider a successful life. I had a PhD in molecular pathology and almost 10 years in scientific consulting. I had climbed to senior management, published academic papers, I was mentoring young professionals, and I had established a respected reputation in my field. I was the quintessential high achiever, analytically minded, type A, competitive, and always ready for a challenge. So within the company, people saw me as dependable and the person who knew how to get things done. I was also really proud of the fact that I had become financially independent. In my personal life, I also felt successful because I got married to my now husband after we had been dating for 7 years. So yeah, by the time my kids were born, I felt that I had checked a lot of the boxes of success off. So you can see that by the time my first son was born, when I was 36 years old, I had lived this whole life. I was accomplished and career-driven with some workaholic tendencies, sure, but I had also adopted this work hard and play hard lifestyle. I put my all in at work, and then I would also find ways of challenging myself outside of work. So it's no surprise then that I also approached motherhood with the same strategic mindset that had really served me so well professionally. After all, I had run 3 marathons. So, in my head, I was like, okay, surely motherhood would just be another challenge to conquer, which is something I love to do anyways. But something unexpected happened. While I loved being a mom, I found myself struggling a lot. And you might think at first that the challenge was because I was trying to work full-time and I was a new mom. And so anyone can really understand how that's overwhelming, right? But I know that that wasn't the full story, because even when I stepped back from work after my second son was born, I still struggled. And it wasn't immediately apparent to me because there are so many big changes that you deal with, right, when you become a mom. And so for a while, I was just kind of chalking it up to new mom syndrome. And in those early times, those changes can be so big that sometimes you don't actually see the tiny changes that you've been making in your life. You don't feel them until those tiny changes start accumulating and then impact you in a much bigger way. That is what I eventually realized. As I ventured further and further into motherhood, I had started to make tiny little changes that inherently were changing who I was and how I saw myself. See, I had waited so long to be a mom that I didn't want to take that for granted. I felt so blessed to have the privilege and the honor of being a mom. I believed, and to be frank, I still do, that this, me being a mom, is the most important role that I have. However, I felt that in order to really be that mom that I wanted to be, I had to put in all of my time and attention into it. So I prioritized my family. I stepped away from a lot of my interests and I paused my goals, and I said that I would get back to those things later. And it's a bit more than that too, though, because it's almost like I willingly sacrificed my needs and goals because I thought that that was basically part of the job. So in those early years, while I loved being a mom, I found myself struggling. Not with motherhood itself, but with what I wasn't doing anymore. My identity had been so wrapped up in my achievements and the freedom to pursue my passions like fitness and gardening and traveling and reading. Now, those parts of me seemed to be slipping away. And one by one, these pieces of myself fell away. And I started telling myself, well, I guess this is who I am now. I guess this is what it means to be a mom. As I said, I had wrapped so much of my identity with my career and my accomplishments that it really was an abrupt identity shift when I left all of that aside. I found that it was really disorienting and I felt lost and I just didn't feel like myself anymore. I was busy with tasks that, if I'm being honest, didn't light me up. And I missed intellectual stimulation and being around other adults. I missed my friends. I missed my financial freedom. So I was basically mourning the loss of things that I used to enjoy and didn't know how to bring them back into my life. It's not like anyone was telling me, oh, Anoki, you can't have these things now because you're a mom. It was basically what I was telling myself. So I was dealing with a full-blown identity crisis. My husband even noticed and would say things to me about it, like, you used to be so peppy and upbeat. I miss that, Anoki. And yeah, I missed her too. So like so many moms that I come across, I felt lost, as if I didn't understand who I was anymore. I was disconnected from the intellectual stimulation that I really craved. I felt guilty anytime I wanted time for myself. I was overwhelmed by all the roles that motherhood required, and I felt so unbalanced between who I wanted to be and who everyone else needed me to be. I couldn't reconcile that difference. And what that did is that it left me as a mom who was stressed out all the time and impatient with my kids. I felt scattered and lost a bit, which I've always been a driven and goal-oriented person. So it was a really odd place for me to be in and to feel like I wasn't productive anymore. And the thing is that I consider myself a high-achieving mom, right? That's who I was even before I became a mom. And that doesn't go away just because I'm a mom now. So when I kept ignoring my ambitions and my ideas, I really felt like a part of me was missing. Here's a metaphor to put a picture to it. I felt like a pair of socks that had been thrown into the washing machine of motherhood. And when all was said and done, only one sock came out while the other mysteriously disappeared. And don't get me wrong, at no point did I ever regret having kids or ever want to go back to who I was before kids without having my family. I just missed other parts of me too. And I missed having long, uninterrupted conversations with adults, feeling intellectually challenged instead of just plain overstimulated by little toys that beeped and flashed and all that. There are other things about me and about how I felt before having a kid that I felt disconnected from, and I didn't know how to get back to feeling normal again. There was no clear path for me because I was so bogged down and overwhelmed in dealing with mental overload. So for those of you who might be thinking it, let me also tell you that this is different from postpartum depression, okay? I still woke up every day looking forward to the day, thankful and grateful that I get to be a mom, and I have never forgotten about the awesomeness of being a mom, bringing life into this world. I woke up every day with big dreams, hopes, plans, ideas, wants, and wishes. I had all of that in me. But then my day would get started, and I would dive into the reality of the tasks and the to-dos and sort of feel disappointed that my plans and ideas were being put on the back burner once again. I couldn't see past any of the minutiae of the daily stuff that I had to do. And I felt like day in and day out, I was just tapping into this one side of me. And all the other parts of me were being ignored. And as a mom, so many things were suddenly just thrown onto my plate. In order to get everything done, I started to let go of more things that used to ground me. So the source of my breakthrough actually came from work. I remember clearly one day being at work and, to be quite frank, feeling relieved because I knew that at least for the next several hours, I knew exactly what had to be done. I knew what the plan was, and I knew what the end product was. I knew what I had to do, and I knew why I was doing it. If I just did the work, and if I just followed the plan, I knew that success was waiting for me at the other side of my hard work. And I wondered how I could feel the same way in my own mom life. So you know how I've mentioned that I'm a problem solver, and that's just how my brain works. So anytime there's a problem or something's broken, I think, I just go into fix-it mode. Can this be fixed? And if yes, how? Basically, I decided to become the research subject in my own experiment. I started applying all of these strategic frameworks from my professional life into my personal life. And for a while, I was basically throwing spaghetti at the wall and trying a bunch of different things. For example, at one point, I thought, well, maybe I just need some help. So we had a nanny for about 2 years. And while there are a lot of benefits to having a nanny, like it allowed me to work full time and experience a little less overwhelm, I realized, though, that it didn't really solve the main problem that I was experiencing, at least. One reason is that I didn't want to go back to being successful at work at the expense of deprioritizing my family, especially my kids. I didn't want to just do a trade, if that makes sense. You know, I wanted to be able to nurture myself while I was also nurturing my kids and my family. So through a lot of trial and error, I did eventually find my way back to incorporating my passions back into my life. I modulated my career so that I had the right balance. As I did this, I got more confident about putting myself in the driver's seat of my own life and systematically customizing my life to fit my goals and my values. What I did was I began taking very intentional steps to customize my life around my specific goals. And so that meant that I had to redefine what success means to me. I needed to start creating goals for Enoki 2.0 rather than trying to live by these outdated goals of the prior Enoki. And yes, I did want to feel the way I felt before, which is, to feel like myself, to feel normal. But I was fundamentally a different person, right? Motherhood changes you forever. So how do you go back to feeling like yourself again when you've changed as a person? Well, the way you do that is you have to redefine your goals and aim for feeling like the person you want to be. So all of those steps that I elucidated for my transformation was what I systemized and I am now calling life planning. I essentially went through this process of life planning even before I really understood what life planning was. I kind of just organically started thinking about these things and trying a bunch of things. But when I look back, I realized there was a system to that madness. What we don't realize is that we actually have more choice in how we live our lives than you might think at first. So before life planning, what was happening was that I felt like these things were just happening to me, right? Things were getting dumped on my plate. And I was just constantly reacting to them and surviving. I didn't have a choice in how my day would go. So I felt hopeless and I wasn't showing up the way I wanted to. And I still have to work on a lot of things, but I'm so much closer to the life that I'm trying to build. And life planning is basically building this roadmap for your life. If any of this sounds familiar, it sounds like you, that feeling of being lost and overwhelmed and disconnected from yourself, that feeling is real, I know. If you're wondering, where did I go? As you're juggling everyone else's needs and your own needs keep getting pushed to the back burner, or if you're feeling guilty that you want time for yourself, remember, I've been exactly where you are. So I want you to understand that this is a struggle that's actually more common than you might know, and that every ambitious mom who's reclaimed her sense of self first had to acknowledge that you can't control the outcome, but you can control whether you have a plan in place and whether you take action on that plan or not. So when you work with me, you can expect to learn about finding clarity, overcoming negative thought patterns, and growing your confidence and trust in taking action on your big ideas. If you're ready to go from feeling like you've lost your dreams to instead creating a customized life where you can thrive as both a mom and be the accomplished woman you've always been, I want to invite you to a free exploratory call. In this 30-minute call, I'm going to help you get clarity on what's really important to you, beyond just being a good mom. Identify what's blocking you from giving yourself permission to take time for yourself and to recharge. You'll be able to discover how my life planning framework can help you stop feeling scattered and lost, and instead you can create this roadmap for becoming who you want to be. I've helped ambitious, goal-oriented moms find their way back to feeling like themselves while still prioritizing their families. And so you don't have to choose between your needs and your family's needs. You can customize a life that honors both. So if this sounds interesting to you, please use the link in the show notes to book your free exploratory call today. You've been taking care of everyone else, and so I think it's time for you to rediscover yourself too. All right, back to this transformation that I started experiencing. Life planning became my blueprint for the changes I was seeing. I needed to rediscover my passions and purpose and then build a vision-guided plan to incorporate into my daily life. And using this sort of top-down approach, I could start making decisions even at the day-to-day level with so much confidence and boldness because I now know the bigger vision I'm trying to reach. And the more I did this, that mental fog began to lift for me. The decision fatigue disappeared because I now knew exactly how I would spend my time and energy, who I was going to let into my life, and where to set the boundaries. I understood the what, the how, and most importantly, the why behind all of these choices I was making. And so within a year, I had crafted a customized life that combined working from home as a scientific consultant on my own terms, building my own business and podcast, homeschooling my children, making time for personal passion projects, and pursuing other creative outlets. I now engage in really interesting conversation and work. I've started to create some financial freedom and feel like I'm contributing to my family. I've also been able to connect meaningfully with my family and the larger community. And so this is how I was able to embrace the chaos of being a mom while still being able to focus on what I need, not just for my own well-being, but also just to have some joy and freedom in my life. This transformation didn't happen overnight, guys. I didn't just snap my fingers and then I had this magical vision and then I blinked my eyes and I'm now living it. It actually required, as I said, small, consistent actions that I was able to gradually build momentum on. And I learned to select one idea at a time, and then I would break it up into manageable chunks and organize my resources and support that I needed so that I could start living this life. I also found the right mindset shifts to take action, and with the right systems and time management techniques in place, I was able to create time blocks that fit into my schedule despite my being a busy mom. And now you know that I help other ambitious, goal-oriented women create meaningful lives in their home and at their work. My mission is to show moms that they can reconnect with what makes them feel like themselves, no matter what stage of motherhood they're in. And so for me, I no longer ask, where did I go? Instead, I welcome the beautiful chaos of motherhood while I'm able to also focus on the things that I need for myself. Life planning has helped me ditch overwhelm so I could become who I wanted to be. So I just want to end on this. The name Solve for Mom, which is what I've been calling the show up till now, refers to the iconic algebra problem where we say solve for X, where you perform a series of mathematical operations and manipulations in order to determine the value of the variable X. Well, this is not to say that moms are a problem to be solved. What I was actually referring to with the name Solve for Mom is that the mom, the woman herself, is also a variable in that family life equation. And so by using processes, identifying inequalities, and applying logic, we can better understand a mom's personal value and craft a life that satisfies both her family needs and her own well-being. So I probably would have been better off if I had explained that from the get-go, somewhere in one of my earlier episodes. But I do think that without that explanation and context, the name Solve for Mom can be a little confusing. So why did I change the name of the show? Because I wanted to stop being cute and cryptic in my messages to you. And instead, I want to be as clear as I can be. So when I think about helping driven, ambitious moms envision, plan, and take action on their big ideas and make a difference, whether it's at home or through their work, my clear message to you is you can achieve your ambitious mom life. I hope today's episode will help you create time and freedom to pursue something you love to do. If you enjoy this show, please subscribe and tell other purpose-driven mamas about it. Who knows? You might even make a new friend by sharing a tip. It's all free. By the way, it would be amazing to hear what you think about the show when you leave a review on Apple Podcasts. After all, my passion is to make this a great experience for you. I'll see you next week for another episode of Achieve Your Ambitious Mom Life with Anoki Kapasi.